In part 5 of our car modeling series in Plasticity, we're going to start to build the front end and hood of our car, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and at this point we are going to carry on with the model from our last video and begin building the front end. So this is going to really start to tie things together, but there are a couple of things that we need to start becoming aware of because we're going to be modeling up to the midline. We need to think about what happens when we mirror surfaces or sheets across that midline, if we have a seam, if we want a seam, and what that really looks like. The first thing that I'm going to do from the side is I am going to trim the bottom of this surface because I don't really want it to be flat. I want it to roll up a little bit. So we're going to start by sort of picking a point over here and just coming up and over, hitting C, and cutting away that piece of the body. Now, if we ever want to, we can select edges and begin extending them. I'm not too concerned about that, so I think that'll be okay. And this gives us more of a pointed front end. Next, I need to bring my edges back. I don't have to, but it's going to be helpful. And we need to start thinking about the hood. Now, when we start to design a car, we can think about whether or not we're going to try to carry tangency. So in some cases, the front of a car would roll over and out. In other cases, we can actually have a hard transition here. I think what we're going to do for this model is we're going to have a hard transition, and then we'll worry about how things sort of blend and roll together, at least as a starting point. Now, also something we should think about is when we look at this thing from the top down, this edge is completely flat. So if I want to start transitioning something, I need to kind of pick an angle. So I'm just going to roughly put this at about 11 degrees, C to cut, and then get rid of that little piece there. Now, the main reason for this is because now what we can do is we can start to create what this front end looks like and then think about that tangency. And where I hit that midline, I'm going to just draw a horizontal line, Alt and J to unjoin them. Because I selected that point first, it should be at the same height. If we want it at the same height, that's fine. We probably want to bring it a little bit lower. So G and Z will bring that line down just a little bit, and then get rid of this one altogether. Now, the main reason we want to get rid of that one is because we're actually going to be bridging from here to that point. Now, at the end, we're going to do G0. We're going to look at this thing from the top down. And let's just take a look at G1 continuity. And this we don't need. I'm just going to delete it. And the reason we had that line there is because now if I mirror this across the midline, that's going to be a smooth transition. Now, maybe you don't want a smooth transition. Maybe you want something that's like a harder crease. But that's the main reason why we put an extra line there. When we're using things like bridge curve or bridge vertex, it'll have that tangency reference. So this is our starting point for what the front end is going to look like. Now, you can kind of see it appears to follow the hood line pretty well. And it comes down. We know that from the top that it's tangent across that midline. So this is going to kind of help us define what that front end looks like. The next step for us is to decide whether or not we're going to build the front end or if we want to start building the hood. Now, for me, I think the hood is actually a pretty good representation of the shape of the car. So that's what I want to do. I want to start with the hood. Now, the hood in this case is going to be lower than the fender. I want to keep it pretty low and then flare the fenders up. So I got to pick where I think the windscreen is roughly going to be, maybe somewhere about there, and then rebuild this curve and start to give it some shape. Actually, I want to take this a little bit lower and then maybe take these a little bit lower as well. So now you can kind of see what we're looking at with the hood from the top. Going to start a new line from this point out horizontal. Remember, when you start from one of these default construction planes, that first selection point is going to be where that line or curve ends up in space. So that's in the right location. And then what I can do is pick the end location, so where I think the windscreen is going to go to, maybe somewhere around here. And I can select that vertex and that one. I can hit L for loft. Now notice with this, it's picked the wrong vertex. It's actually picked that midline curve. So what we could do is we could hide this temporarily, and then we could try it again. So this vertex to that one, and on the end curve, it's going to be G0. On the start, we'll do G1 and get rid of that. So now that kind of represents where the windscreen is. If it's going to be completely horizontal, that's fine. In some cases, you'll find that the bottom of windscreens, based on the angle or the geometry of the car, might be completely horizontal. Some might end up coming up a little bit. And so I'll bring that one up. And then what we want to do is kind of figure out where our hood line is going to be. So if this shape is going to flare, actually come back and flare down in, then we want to figure out where that is. I'm going to start that by just drawing a line. Now, again, keep in mind that endpoint, because we were looking top down, isn't actually going to be connected. So we need to do GZ and hold down Control to make it snap. If this endpoint doesn't turn blue, then it didn't actually snap. So GG, hold down Control and make sure the tooltip next to the cursor says curve, and then that should turn blue. So next, let's go ahead and rebuild this, because right now it is just completely flat. So we want to make sure that we do give it some curvature. Let's go ahead and actually let's right click on here and let's turn off show faces so we can just see the edges. We'll do GG. And I think I want this to be higher than the hood. So I'm going to bring it up a bit. And from the top, G and X, maybe you want to flare it this way just a little bit, just to give the body a place to go. Now I'm going to select this and hit Alt and J, which will break up those sections, which gives me a nice clean selection to start to generate things. Now, if I want a seam at the middle, I kind of have to plan for that. It's going to be a little bit tricky to do. We might need to add it later, but for this concept, I don't want to add a seam yet. So what I'm going to do is just hit E to extrude and extrude that surface out. Let's bring show faces back. Hide that curve and then create a loft. So edge selection, we're going to loft from here to here. That's a guide. Shift select that as a guide and then hide this. Actually, we don't need to hide it. We can delete it. We have the curve to create it. So let's hide this as well. And I'm going to hide that. I don't know if I need those or not, but I'm going to keep them around for now. And this color is probably hard to see. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. So now what we have is the starting point for the hood. It's pretty smooth. We can go back and add more detail. Not a big deal. But what we want to think about at this point is, where is the windscreen and the rest of that going to go? So are we going to carry this back and create the rest of that shape? Or are we not worried about that at this stage? So I think we're not really worried about it yet, but I think that we should at least be aware. So what I'm going to do is I am going to come back to here, Alt and J. I'm going to rebuild this curve. Actually, hold on. Rebuild this curve and just start to give it some rough shape. Yeah, that's not really working for me just yet, so I think we're not quite there. I think probably what I'm going to do, just looking at the shape, is I'll probably build the back section. So maybe similar to an early C3 Corvette, so late 60s, where it had the sort of notch back. I'll probably do something like that on the back end, or at least build the back section of it first and then fill it in. Not really sure yet, but let's go ahead and focus on the front. So on the front, we've got this position where the windscreen sort of ends. Now, I'm going to take a vertical line, and I hate to do this with a nice clean body, but I'm going to do Shift-I to imprint and break it up there. And the reason for that is it gives me a good reference edge. So I want to think about going from here down to here. Now the trick or the problem of this is if we try to do tangency off of this, it's going to end up going this sort of crazy direction. So for right now, I'm not going to do anything here, but I am going to just try to do a loft from one to the other and use this as a guide. And you can see as soon as I add a guide, it doesn't work because this guide only has tangency here. Here it doesn't. It's just going to be a sharp corner. So we can kind of see what's happening is it's giving me this transition here and then a sharp corner here, which maybe that's okay. It doesn't look great, but yeah, I mean, we could start there. I think with these big fender flares, it kind of is detracting from that shape a little bit. Let's hit escape and let's try to loft one more time without the guide just to see what this looks like. So let's hide the edges and let's just take a look at it. So that's an interesting shape. I think with that shape, the wheel arch kind of doesn't work. But that's okay. All right, so I think I have an idea. I think I have a plan. So let's go ahead and bring our edges back. I think what I want to do is I'm going to take a curve. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this edge. So Shift D, bring back all selections and move this in a bit. And then use this curve to cut the hood. So I'm going to get rid of that section, get rid of that curve, and then try to do this again. So 2 for my edges. We'll loft from here to here. We'll use G2 continuity. Maybe we'll use G1 here. Actually, let's take a look at it with G0. I think G1's probably better. Yeah. All right. Now let's turn off our edges and let's take a look. Looking pretty cool. I'm still not sold on it. So I think what I'm going to do is cut away more of the hood. So once again, duplicate, top view, and let's go ahead and rebuild this curve. And I want to take all of these points inward. I actually think I want to take this one in as well. Just cut the hood back a bit further, but I want to keep that front point where it was. So we'll take this curve, we'll cut the hood. We can always go back and make the hood again, or undo quite a bit. So 2, edge selection, it's loft. All right, now it's looking a bit more gradual. Let's look at it from the front. All right, turn off our edges. All right, looking a little bit better. Still have one more thing I want to do. Let's go ahead and bring our edges back. Top. And I think, let's go ahead and duplicate this. We're going to rebuild it. And I'm actually going to get rid of that little section there. And I want to take these and move them in X. And then take this, actually, yeah, that's okay. Basically what I'm trying to do is cut away a little bit more of the hood. So I'm going to take this entire curve and just move it in a bit. And we'll take this one and delete that one. All right, so now let's cut away. We don't have much of this original hood left. But now I want to create a bridge curve on the front end of this. So that's at 1, that's at 1. We use G2 continuity for both. And let's just try it on the back end. Let's see what this looks like. So from there to there, 1, 0. I think the A pillar is going to be pretty tricky on this, but that's okay. Well, we're just still playing with shapes. We'll loft, shift select these as guides, make that G2, G2, and let's accept it. So hide these, hide that. 5 for all selection. And let's mirror this across just to get a good idea what this thing looks like. So hide our edges, do this, and I think the bulge is okay, but it almost should be narrower up front. Like this section here should be narrower for that shape. So I think it's got a unique look, but I'm not really sold on it. I'm not sure that that's the right thing. So let's bring our edges back. I am going to get rid of the stuff on the other side. I'm going to get rid of that. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to try to loft between these two. It's the wrong way. Okay. So Shift D. Let's hide this for now. We'll extrude this one. Get rid of that. And now let's try to loft between these. So I'm going to do G0 here. And get rid of that. So now if we take both of these and mirror them across X, make it shiny, hide the edges. All right, I think that looks better. I'm just, the front fender flare is just not fitting the shape very well. I think that's going to need a lot of work, which is okay. But I think what's going to end up happening is the fender flare, it's going to have to go to this edge, this upper edge here. It's just going to have to make that work. But that's okay. We can make that happen. But I think that this hood shape fits the overall design a little bit better. I think having this flare here, then the wheel arch kind of bumping out, it just didn't quite work. But that's okay. Again, this is the whole point. We want to explore these shapes. We want to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I think this is a better solution. Now, we can figure out where the A pillar is going to go. So if we bring back our all selection, I'll worry about the wheel arches a little bit later. I really want to fill in kind of the rest of the body. So before we get to the windscreen, I think what we have here is pretty good in terms of where the windscreen is going to be. I think that location and that shape is okay. But I think what we want to do is maybe start to build the back end. So I need to come up with where the back end is going to be. And I'm going to start by doing it basically from this edge back. So I'm going to duplicate this, so Shift D. And then I'm going to scale it, but I need to move the pivot point. So V on the keyboard. I'm going to move the pivot point to the origin, scale in X, and hit 0 on the keyboard. So essentially what we did was we just moved that curve directly to 0. And now I'm going to move it up, GZ, just a little bit because we want the curvature to go up and over. And because we now have both sides, I'm just going to go ahead and hit 2 on the keyboard and loft between all three of these. But these are going to be G0. And the main reason for that is because we've got G0 continuity up front. We can carry that through the rest of the body. And we can kind of just sort of fill in the gap. So now we can loft from here to here, G0. This is a guide. This is a guide over here, which it's not going to work because it's two pieces. All right, let's join these together. We can always separate them later if we want to. And let's do this again. So we'll loft from here to here. Those will both have tangency. This will be a guide. This will be a guide. Both will be G0, and that should work. All right. So we kind of got the middle shape of the car. In general, I probably wouldn't do it this way. I'm going to toggle off X-ray. In general, I probably wouldn't build out the middle of the car like that for something that maybe has a bit more curvature. But most of this is going to get cut away. And this also gives us an opportunity to join things together and take a look at how a blended or a filleted edge looks. So 5 on the keyboard. I'm going to select all of these as well as the other side and say join. And then I'm going to select this edge and blend it. I'm going to control select the other side just so that they're the same. Now this is a chamfer, so let's pull it out the other way. I'm going to use G2 continuity. I want to be careful not to get, not to make it too big because I don't want to roll into this, this arch there. And then let's hide our edges and just take a look. That's not too bad. It looks pretty good. All right. So I really like the hard body line there. I'm thinking that I want one down the middle. So I think to end this video, let's go ahead and make a hard body line down the middle. And the way that I'm going to do that, so first I'm going to use from the front, I'm going to make a line from the origin just straight up and down. And then we'll do Shift I, which will essentially just let me split the rest of the body. It's still all one piece, but now it has that seam down the middle. Now, I think the way that I want to go about this is I'm going to take this midline, everywhere it is, and we're going to do Shift D to duplicate it, and I'm going to move it up just slightly in Z, so maybe 1/2 inch. And that 1/2 inch, it's probably a bit extreme, but that 1/2 inch is going to be where that seam is. And then what I want to do is split the middle of this on both sides. Now, the way that I'm going to make that happen is I'm actually going to just get rid of the left side. And I'm going to do that by Shift Delete to get rid of that section, which will break this apart from it. And then I can just hide that section for right now. So we've got this hood piece I don't need anymore because I think we're past that. And then we've got this right-hand section. Next, I'm going to do Control R. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Next, I'm going to draw another vertical line at the origin, but then I'm going to move it in X, a specified amount, let's say 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to use Cut, and then just get rid of that cut section. So that should be there. All right, so now go back to our edge selection. We're going to select all the edges on the surface. Make sure that we have them all. We're going to select this, and we're going to loft to it. Now, when we loft to it, it should have G1 continuity here. We'll right-click and accept. And then go back to our all selection. Join this together, so J on the keyboard. Get rid of that line in the middle. Now, that edge is probably a bit extreme, but once we add a fillet to it, it's going to sort of dull it down a little bit. I need to mirror everything to the other side. So I actually don't need that other copy. I'm going to take this one and mirror the whole thing. That was weird. All right, let's try again. Take this, mirror it across X. It looks like it crosses over the middle. So I'm going to turn off slice down the middle. All right, hold on. Let's see what happened in the middle. Something funky happened with tangency. Okay, so let's do Control Z till before we did that loft. And with them selected, we're going to do G0 continuity here. So G0 continuity should definitely not go over the middle. We can join them together, get rid of that other copy over there. And now we definitely shouldn't have any overlap in the middle. Okay, that's looking a bit better. All right, I'm going to join these together. Then I'm going to select this edge and begin adding G2 continuity fillet. And we'll do the same thing in the middle. So we'll use G2 continuity. And this is probably a bit more extreme, but let's see what it looks like. Yeah, that is way too hard of a seam. All right. So that tells me I got to roll back a bit. So Control Z. We're going to go back. Let's bring our edges back so we can kind of see what we're doing. All right. So at this point, let's just delete that. So I think what I'm going to do is make another line, but instead of moving it 1/2 inch, we're going to move it a bit further. So let's move it over, let's try 2 inches. And then cut, get rid of that, get rid of that. And I think I probably moved this up too high. So we're going to say G, Z. And I think we moved it up 1/2 inch. So let's say minus, let's go over here, minus 0.25. And let's try to loft this. All right, so a loft between those. Because now we've got a bit more of a gap, tangency shouldn't be an issue. So I'm going to accept that. We'll join these together. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And let's try this again. Let's mirror the whole thing over. Join them together. And then now we can fillet that. Do something probably about 2 inches, G2 continuity. Now let's hide our edges and all right. That's a bit better, a bit more mild, carries all the way through. Obviously, when we get to do more detail on the hood, then we'll adjust as needed, but that gives me a good body line to kind of take a look at. Now, if we go to the clay, we can see that okay. All right. All right, it's looking pretty good. I think that we're probably going to go back and do a lot more with the wheel arches. I think the style was what I had in my head, but it's really not working. And I think we can do some cooler stuff with it, but that's okay. Again, it's all part of the process. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to save our work so far. And then if you have any questions on anything we've done, please let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.